Every single day, drivers enjoy the luxury and convenience of modern vehicles. Cars that park themselves, steer automatically, and even talk back when you ask for directions. But few realize that this era of effortless driving was built upon decades of bold ideas, failed experiments, and innovations that once promised to redefine the future. From bench seats that symbolized family and freedom, to record players that turned your car into a moving concert, the automobile world has seen it all: triumph, failure, and everything in between. Some ideas were ahead of their time, others were victims of poor execution, but each tells a fascinating story about our relentless pursuit of perfection on four wheels. So, buckle up as we journey through the past to rediscover 20 car innovations that failed to stand the test of time. Bench seats. Comfort over safety. In the golden age of motoring, cars weren't just machines, they were living rooms on wheels. And at the heart of that comfort sat the bench seat, a long, uninterrupted cushion stretching across the entire front row. Introduced in the 1920s, bench seats allowed three people to sit comfortably side by side. They were perfect for families, for lovers, for anyone who valued closeness over convenience. But as cars evolved, so did the dangers. Bench seats provided little to no support during a crash, offered no individualized seat belts or headrests, and made airbags difficult to install. By the late 1980s, the design that once symbolized freedom was gone, replaced by bucket seats that prioritized safety and structure. Today, bench seats are only found in old classics, relics of a time when driving was as personal as it was perilous. Vent windows, the original air conditioner before air conditioning became a standard feature. There was the humble vent window, a small triangular pane of glass at the front corner of a car's door. Introduced in the 1930s, vent windows were simple yet brilliant. You could crack them open to let a stream of fresh air into the cabin without lowering the main window. They became especially popular during the 1950s and 60s, adorning everything from family sedans to luxury cruisers. For drivers, it was a touch of freedom, a way to feel the wind without the noise and turbulence of a rolled-down window. But vent windows had their flaws. They often leaked during rain, were easy entry points for thieves, and disrupted the sleek, aerodynamic lines that newer car designs demanded. By the 1980s, as air conditioning became standard, automakers phased them out entirely. The once beloved wing window was sealed shut forever, a small but iconic piece of automotive history lost to time. Ashtrays, the end of a smoky tradition there, was a time when lighting a cigarette behind the wheel was considered sophisticated, even glamorous. And for decades, every car came equipped with an ashtray and lighter, usually built right into the dashboard. From the 1930s through the 1970s, car ashtrays weren't just functional, they were status symbols. They reflected an era when smoking was as common as fastening your seatbelt. But as public awareness grew about the dangers of smoking, automakers began to rethink their priorities. Fire hazards, lingering odors, and declining demand made in-car ashtrays obsolete. By the late 1990s, they vanished entirely, replaced by cup holders and storage spaces. What once represented style and sophistication became a quiet reminder of how quickly culture and priorities can change. Record players, the short-lived mobile concert Imagine, cruising down the highway while your favorite vinyl spins softly in the dashboard. In the 1950s, that dream became reality. Car manufacturers introduced in-car record players, believing they had created the next big thing in automotive entertainment. At first, it seemed revolutionary. No more static-filled radio signals, just pure analog sound. But the reality? Every bump in the road made the needle skip. Records scratched, players jammed, and drivers got frustrated. By the 1960s, record players had disappeared as quickly as they arrived, replaced by 8-track tapes and later, cassettes. Still, the idea lives on in spirit, the desire to bring music, comfort, and mood into the driving experience. But as far as vinyl goes, the road was never smooth enough. Landau bars. When style trumped function in the early 20th century, luxury cars borrowed their look from horse-drawn carriages. One of the most distinctive design elements was the Landau bar, decorative metal bars on the roof's side, mimicking the folding mechanism of old convertible carriages. They served no purpose other than aesthetics. But that didn't matter. In the 1920s and 30s, they became a mark of elegance and prestige. However, as automotive design shifted toward function over form, Landau bars began to feel outdated. They added weight, rusted easily, and symbolized excess rather than innovation. By the late 20th century, they were gone, replaced by features that actually improved the driving experience, like sunroofs and panoramic glass. The Landau bar remains a reminder that style, no matter how charming, can't survive without purpose. Column shifters, a relic of simpler times. Before center consoles dominated car interiors, gear shifts used to sit right on the steering column. Known as column shifters, they were first introduced in the 1930s to free up space in the front seat. This clever innovation allowed room for an extra passenger, making it a hit among families and cab drivers. But as cars became faster and sportier, the column shifter's limitations became clear. It wasn't as precise as a floor-mounted shifter, its mechanisms wore out quickly, and it simply couldn't match the performance feel of newer designs. By the 1970s, floor shifters took over, providing more control and a modern look. Today, column shifters are mostly found in old pickups and vintage cruisers, nostalgic reminders of when cars were built for people, not performance metrics. Luggage racks. Adventures on the roof. There was a time when long road trips were a summer ritual, and no car was complete without a luggage rack bolted to the roof. These racks were symbols of freedom, of families hitting the open road, suitcases tied down with rope, and adventure waiting just beyond the horizon. But nostalgia doesn't equal practicality. Luggage racks increased wind resistance, reduced fuel efficiency, and often caused accidents when cargo wasn't properly secured. As trunk spaces grew larger and aerodynamic designs took over, external racks became unnecessary. They were eventually replaced by sleeker roof boxes, which offered both safety and style. Yet for those who remember the golden age of road trips, the old metal luggage rack still carries the spirit of discovery. Car phones, the original mobile revolution, decades before smartphones took over. The car phone was the ultimate status symbol. First introduced in 1946, these bulky devices weighed nearly 80 pounds and required complex wiring. Still, for business professionals, it was magic. The ability to make a call from your car. But the technology was limited. Reception was poor, service was expensive, and the bulky hardware took up valuable cabin space. By the 1990s, the rise of handheld mobile phones rendered car phones obsolete. What once represented futuristic luxury became a historical footnote. Today, cars are smarter than ever, with Bluetooth and built-in communication systems, proof that the dream of mobile connectivity didn't die. It simply evolved. Hood ornaments. Beauty meets danger once upon a time. The front of every luxury car was crowned with a hood ornament, a chrome figure that symbolized speed, grace, and prestige. From the spirit of ecstasy on a Rolls-Royce to the leaping Jaguar, these ornaments were works of art. But they also posed risks. In accidents, they could become deadly projectiles, and theft was rampant. As safety standards and aerodynamics improved, hood ornaments disappeared or became retractable. Today, they're mostly confined to vintage models or collector's editions. glimmering memories of a time when cars weren't just transportation, they were statements. Pop-up headlights, the cool factor that couldn't last. If you grew up in the 1980s or 90s, you probably remember the thrill of pop-up headlights. Cars like the Corvette, Mazda RX-7, and Toyota MR2 used them to create a sleek, futuristic profile. When you flicked the lights on, they rose smoothly from the hood, like eyes waking from sleep. It was mechanical poetry, but that magic came with problems. The motors often failed, the design hurt aerodynamics, and changing safety laws made them impractical. By the early 2000s, they were gone for good. Still, few features have captured the hearts of enthusiasts quite like those blinking headlights. Small, simple, unforgettable. Floor dimmer switch. Flash of the past long before high-beam levers appeared behind the steering wheel. Drivers used their foot to control the headlights. The floor dimmer switch allowed motorists to toggle between high and low beams with a simple press. Convenient, practical, and hands-free. But dirt, moisture, and wear often rendered the switch unreliable. As cars became more advanced, steering column controls proved safer and easier to maintain. By the 1980s, the floor dimmer had faded into history. Still, for classic car lovers, pressing that little floor button remains a nostalgic act, a small detail from a simpler mechanical world. Vinyl roofs, luxury that didn't last in the 1960s and 70s. Car makers discovered a way to make hardtops look like convertibles without the cost. Vinyl roofs. They were stylish, elegant, and screamed luxury, especially on models like the Lincoln Continental and Cadillac Eldorado. But vinyl didn't age gracefully. It cracked, peeled, and trapped moisture that led to rust. Within a few years, what once looked sophisticated turned shabby. By the 1980s, automakers abandoned the idea, opting for modern paint finishes that lasted longer and looked cleaner. Still, those shiny vinyl roofs remain icons of an era when car design dared to blend class with creativity, even if it didn't stand the test of time. 8-track tapes. The soundtrack of the 70s before. Cassettes and CDs ruled the road. The 8-track tape was king. Developed in the mid-1960s, it offered endless music playback without flipping the tape. A dream for long drives. But it wasn't perfect. Tapes jammed, audio quality degraded, and the loud click during track changes broke immersion. By the early 1980s, 8 tracks were replaced by compact cassettes, which were cheaper, smaller, and more reliable. Still, that iconic ka-chunk sound of an 8-track changing tracks is burned into the memories of anyone who grew up in that musical revolution. Automatic seat belts, the safety shortcut. That backfired in the late 1980s. Some cars came equipped with automatic seat belts that slid into place when you closed the door. The idea was to improve safety by making buckling up automatic. But drivers quickly discovered the flaw. These belts only secured the upper body, leaving the lap belt manual. Many people ignored that step, leading to dangerous injuries. Malfunctions were also common. Belts jammed, sensors failed, and passengers got trapped. By the mid-1990s, airbags became standard, and automatic seat belts disappeared. What was meant to save lives became one of the industry's most frustrating missteps. Tail fins. The jet age on wheels. Inspired by fighter planes and rockets, the tail fin defined 1950s car design. They began with the 1948 Cadillac and soon became a nationwide obsession. Big fins meant bold personality. A celebration of speed, freedom, and post-war optimism. But the trend spiraled out of control. By 1959, fins were massive, impractical, and dangerous in crashes. The craze burned bright and died fast. By the mid-1960s, cleaner, more aerodynamic designs took over. Yet, tail fins remain the ultimate symbol of automotive excess. Proof that design, like fashion, can go too far. Push-button transmissions. The future that didn't click in the 1950s, automakers promised a new era of convenience. Push-button transmissions. Instead of a lever, you simply pressed a button to change gears. Chrysler led the charge, promoting it as futuristic and foolproof. But electrical issues, confusing layouts, and frequent malfunctions made drivers skeptical. People missed the tactile feel of a traditional shifter. By the 1960s, the idea was abandoned, though ironically, modern cars now use buttons and dials again, this time perfected by technology that finally caught up. White-wall tires, elegance that faded once upon a time. White-wall tires were the ultimate mark of class. They gleamed on luxury cars, turning heads wherever they rolled. But they were expensive, difficult to clean, and didn't match the sleeker designs of modern cars. As practicality took priority, black tires became the norm. By the 1980s, white walls were nearly extinct, surviving only on vintage classics. Their pristine look may have faded, but their charm never did. Curb feelers, the noisy protectors before parking sensors and backup cameras. There were curb feelers, thin metal wires that scraped the curb to warn drivers they were too close. They were clever, cheap, and surprisingly effective. But they were also noisy, embarrassing, and easily damaged. As technology advanced, ultrasonic sensors and cameras replaced them entirely. The sound of metal brushing concrete disappeared, replaced by gentle beeps. Curb feelers were gone, but their spirit lives on in every parking assist system today. T-tops, halfway to freedom in the 1970s and 80s, T-tops were the definition of cool. Two removable glass panels gave you open-air freedom without the flimsiness of a convertible. Cars like the Corvette and Firebird wore them proudly. But leaks, rattles, and storage hassles plagued the design. By the 1990s, sunroofs and panoramic roofs offered a cleaner solution. T-tops faded away, but their legacy remains, immortalized in pop culture and automotive nostalgia. Woodies, the cars made of trees. Perhaps the most iconic of all forgotten innovations, Woodies were cars with real wooden body panels. In the 1930s and 40s, they were symbols of craftsmanship and family adventure, but wood required constant maintenance, warped with weather, and offered little crash protection. As steel became cheaper and safer, wood-bodied cars vanished by the 1950s. Yet, their charm endures. A tribute to an era when cars were built by hand, not by robots. From bench seats to Woodies, each of these innovations carried the same spark: the desire to make driving better, safer, or simply more beautiful. They didn't all succeed, but they paved the road for the technologies we enjoy today. Because in the end, every failure in automotive history brought us one step closer to the cars of the future. Which of these innovations do you miss the most? If you enjoyed this journey through time, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories from the golden age of cars.